Welcome to Baby's First Podcast, brought to you by FAIR. I'm Traci Stumpf, and this is Ruchi Gupta. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am good. So nice to see you, Traci.
It's nice to see you too.
Long.
How's your life? You feeling good about it?
Yeah, look at this world. It's opening up. It's a beautiful day. No more masks.
I'm in California, and today is our reopen day.
Congratulations. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. I know. I'm fine. Whatever.
What'd you do? Did you walk outside without a mask on and smile at everyone? That beautiful smile.
Yeah, I've been showing people my white ass teeth for a while now, but I don't know. Is the mandate now that if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask? Is that right?
Most places.
Or is it everybody?
Yeah, most places you don't have to wear a mask now if you're fully vaccinated. I think some hospitals and clinics and medical places.
So my concern is always Lois. It's always my baby. I'm fully vaccinated, and so is everybody that we hang out with. But I will say, I don't trust everybody at Trader Joe's that they are fully vaccinated with their masks off. It feels like the people who are the quickest to take their masks off are the ones who haven't completely gone through with it yet. And my understanding of the logistics and the science behind it all is it's a 95% protected, right? So there's still a 5% chance that I could get it. I'm not going to get sick and die, but I could give it to somebody who's unvaccinated or unable to get the vaccine, which is my 13-month-old daughter. And that just feels so unfair. And I feel like people are like, you're not trusting science. And I'm like, no, I'm not trusting humanity. That's who I don't trust.
Right? Because it's honor system.
It's honor system. And I'm not for politicizing any of this, but it's just, I feel scared for my offspring. I don't feel scared for myself, if that makes sense.
I think a lot of people feel that way. And so most places I go, if you're indoors, it's half and half. People are wearing masks and it's fine and it's good. And I think a lot of those people are people with young children who aren't vaccinated yet, who don't want to take a chance. So even if they are. So I think that is perfectly okay. And it's a good thing to do. It's so challenging right now because everyone's weighing their own risk and their own family's risk and, what's going on in their own worlds. And so it's weird when you don't have the mandate where everybody has to do something. And now you have to make up your own mind as to what you think is best for you and your family. But
I want to get a mask that just says I'm vaxxed,
That's right.
Man, it's
sure
challenging. It's a new world to kind of navigate through. And it just feels like one more thing,
That's right.
But great. It's exciting. I love a booming economy, and I love people, and I'm excited for all of it. I've been taking Lois to a lot of restaurants lately, which is fun.
Wow, good for
you.
It's
really exciting.
I know she finally gets to see people. She's like, what's going on?
Yeah, she's like, there's more than just you and that guy and our doctor. It's just so crazy to watch her explore and be curious. And I had this deep fear that she was going to be this true to form pandemic baby and not be able to make eye contact or anything. But she just got those social skills so fast. She waves to everybody, says hi. I love it. I love it so much. It's so great.
That's beautiful. I feel like more than the pandemic, these kids aren't having social skills because they're just looking at their phone all the time. So at least
I have a hard and fast no screens with her. I mean, she's little, so it's easy, but I have a lot of friends who are like, oh no, I always let my baby watch TV, but I feel like that can't be good long-term, right?
Right. No, absolutely. Screen time is such a big area of work. What is enough? And during COVID, it was, all bets off. Let them watch the screen. They're on the screen all day for school. They're on screen for their homework. It was way too much screen. So it's so nice now that things are normalizing and they can see each other in person. And hopefully they weren't too scarred by it, in that year.
I've really found that people rebound fast and kids even faster, we adapt quick and we rebound fast. And it's such a beautiful life lesson to know that you really can go through anything and come out the other side, which I love so much.
True. Resiliency and kids have it. That's why I became a pediatrician. I'm like, well, most kids get better on their own anyway. So
Yeah. This will be easy.
I think I can do this. Yeah.
I would imagine like the hardest part about being a pediatrician is dealing with the parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Great ones like you, Traci. So it's a good balance.
I don't know, guys. Not that great. I'm really excited about today's episode. Today we have a nutritionist on, and she's a good friend of yours, right?
Very good friend.
I have so many questions about nutrition and feeding Lois and how to integrate different foods into her diet and like what's appropriate and what's not. I'm kind of not as scared, thanks to you, Ruchi, of like the food allergies anymore. I feel like my fear of that is kind of subsided, but man, food in general is just such a big umbrella of insanity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For everyone, any age, we're all navigating that. Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's bring on our expert nutritionist, Carina Venter. Come on.
Hello.
Yay. Hi.
So you guys are buds, right? You guys are longtime buddies.
Fun fact, we share the same birthday.
That's exciting.
Day, month, year. So it's pretty wild. So we're
what
kind
sign are you guys?
You know, but
Geminis.
Geminis.
And actually, we share our birthday with one of the most famous allergists in the world. So it seems like our birthday was the day where you were destined to end up working in food allergy.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
What a weird coincidence.
Right. The one who did the LEAP study, who started this whole peanut introduction stuff. So
wow. Yeah. The legend.
The legend, yes.
You guys ever had like a joint birthday party, the three of you?
Yeah, we need to.
Good idea.
Let's plan that. That'll be, and everyone listening is invited. We'll try someday.
Carina, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. We really appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit about like your background and who you are?
So my name is Katherine Venter. I'm a dietitian or nutritionist by background. I am South African, as you can probably tell from my accent, where I did my degree in dietetics. We then moved to England, where I did my PhD in allergy and immunology. I lived on the Isle of Wight for 20 years, where my children were born as well. And the Isle of Wight is really world famous for their cohort studies because we're able to actually follow these children over time. And we have about 3 or 4 different cohorts now running sequentially on the Isle of Wight. So we can also look at differences in eating patterns over time. And we've recently published some papers looking at that. And then about 6 years ago, I was recruited to Cincinnati, where I spent 2.5 years. I missed working with cohort studies and in the field of nutrition and allergy prevention. So when I was offered a position in Colorado, I moved here. And more recently, I've been collaborating with Ruchi again on a study focusing on nutrition and definitely allergy outcomes as well. But we're very interested in just looking at how nutrition affects infant development, food preferences, and we will probably be following these children up over time to learn about how, when obesity develops and, how we can prevent it. And actually, on that note, we have published a study from the Isle of Wight showing that by 4 years of age, a child is set on their trajectory of obesity and asthma for life. And depending on which trajectory you are by age 4, we can almost with 100% certainty tell what's going to happen to you by the time you're 25. So early life nutrition, of course, is a huge interest of mine and highly important in preventing disease.
So what's the common denominator at 4 that triggers obesity?
So it's interesting because we had 4 trajectories. So we had the babies that were born underweight and they stayed underweight for life. We had the babies that were born underweight, and then within that first 4 years of life, they gained a lot of weight and they ended up overweight. Then we had the normal weight babies that stayed normal weight, and we had the overweight babies who then seemed to lost a little bit of weight and they ended up in the trajectory going downward. So they didn't end up, obese. And so one of the things we concluded, which many other people have shown as well, is that really we don't want to escalate weight gain in the first 4 years of life, because that is when we make most of our fat cells. And perhaps having a slightly underweight baby, I'm not talking about, I know Ruchi is a pediatrician, we don't want babies that's not growing and thriving. We want babies to grow well, but perhaps we shouldn't really overfeed these babies just to get them from the bottom of the growth chart to the top of the growth chart, because that can have the detrimental effects on long-term health and heart disease outcomes. So that first 4 years is really when babies, you know, learn to eat and love food and develop food preferences for life. We didn't have enough data on the Isle of Wight to look at from a nutritional angle why these babies became overweight and why that perhaps overweight babies at birth became, you know, normal weight, which is definitely something we need to look at. But clear conclusion, you know, that first 4 years is crucial.
Can I ask you a question? Does it have anything to do with how a parent or a caregiver speaks to the kid? Like, is there any sort of like emotional intelligence there, or is it all just consumption?
There is definitely emotional intelligence going on there as well. Again, that was one of the papers I published, you know, looking at maternal feeding style and, you know, how babies developed eating. And, you know, without giving another lecture about something that can get really complex, it's just, you know, we need to be very aware of babies' cues. Let them eat when they're hungry, stop when they're full. Babies turn their heads away for a reason. They've had enough. The fact that the bowl is not empty doesn't mean we have to force those other 2 tablespoons of food down. And I think that is the one thing, and also in the study with Ruchi, you know, we of course we talk about the food allergy side, but there's a lot of information in the parent handouts about listen to your baby, you know, let your baby lead the weaning process, not you as a parent.
Is there detrimental effects to obesity if you underfeed your baby, or if like you take something away before they're full?
I don't think in terms of obesity anybody has studied that, but you won't sleep. You know, if your baby is hungry, you're not going to sleep. So perhaps the short-term effects of, you know, not feeding a baby sufficiently is more clear. But the other thing as well, as which Ruchi will know as a pediatrician, you know, every time they see a doctor, we weigh those babies. And it is very distressing for the medical team as well as the parent when the weight is just not going up the centile chart as we were expecting. So you would see definitely in the short term as well that they're dropping off their centile charts. But once again, or percentile charts, as you say in America, centile charts is very English. You know, that's easily rectifiable, but we don't want to overcompensate. It's a gradual process getting them back on their growth pattern. It's not a matter of overfeeding for 2-3 months, because that's where the detrimental effect lies.
I think
I remember.
We call it the growth chart, right? Like you've probably seen it, Traci. Lois's growth chart, right? Where you probably show you when you go to the pediatrician's office, like what percentile she's at, and if she cross percentiles, and then, you know, we counsel on, okay, you know, they were 50th, now they're kind of creeping up to 75th, and what's going on? And a lot of times it's not slowing down their feeds, but it's decreasing the caloric intake of those feeds, you know? So, so we have ways to do it, but Carina's totally right. Those first 4 years are so important. And I think, you know, culturally, depending on your culture, I know my culture, it was like, you got to finish what's on your plate, right? Or you got to eat this much, or food was such an important part of it. So it's all, you know, feed, that's love, you know? So we got to kind of change that from the very beginning, because those first 4 years are so important to get into eat when you're hungry, to Carina's point, and stop when they're full, and feed them healthy foods and not necessarily high caloric foods all the time. And so, you know, getting to that, Traci's got this beautiful 1-year-old or 13-month-old, and we've been talking about feeding forever. And like when she started, what was your first food, Traci? What did Lois eat?
The first thing she ate was like a rice cereal, which kind of went against not everything that I stand for, but like I definitely like stay away from like grains, and like I try to like keep her on like a very clean, lots of vegetables and like proteins. And I mean, she eats grains and stuff. She's not like on Whole30, like I'm not like a psycho or anything like that, but I definitely try to keep her diet as clean as possible, just because I know the repercussions of not eating healthy. And it's not, I just want to set my daughter up for success. So I gave her rice cereal as like her first like intro food to kind of like coat her belly. And then avocado was the second thing that she was on. But now she eats everything, which I love. I love that she has like such a diverse palate. But it's a challenge, like keeping it clean and easy, and being able to prepare meals and like, 3 meals and 2 snacks every day of like clean, healthy food that isn't too much. And like, when do you, it's just mental gymnastics, the food stuff for me.
I think,
yeah, recommend, Carina. What do you tell parents when they're starting?
To some extent, and we did focus now a little bit on obesity, but that really is not really all what nutrition is about.
Right.
I think, in many ways, I think the pendulum swung. Ruchi, when I grew up in South Africa as well, everybody wanted to feed you because that was a way of showing love, But I think we then sort of like almost developed a fear for food, We developed a fear for allergens, and we developed a fear for inflammatory foods. I'm on way too many social websites, which I don't have time to read, and then I go on there. But just last night, I read a whole blog on inflammatory foods and how bad it is, to feed babies egg and milk and peanut, which is the total opposite of what we have to do. And so what I would say, and what I say to parents, is trust the process, trust your baby. Babies know when they're hungry, they know when they're full. Take the example, the number one factor that determines what a boy eats is what a baby boy sees his dad eats. So I say, you eat healthy, your child will eat healthy. Of course, everybody's going to eat a burger and pizza every now and then. I'm not banning anything that's not whole grain and, high fiber and low fat. And also for babies anyway, we don't want low fat diets. So trust the baby, trust the process, cook as often as you can, home cooked food. There is no such thing as a bad food. It's all about balance at the end of the day. We want as much fruit and vegetables, as much, whole grain foods, meat. Many people are scared of meat. If for any cultural reason you avoid meat, that's fine. If you don't want to feed your baby meat, then that's fine as well. But we have to realize it has to be replaced by non-meat products. Babies don't need to have a low-fat diet. If you don't want to feed them palm oil, which is perfectly good, then give them avocado or foods with olive oil. And so we just have that discussion. But I normally start with, what do you as a family eat? And I normally address what the parents eat and say, now go home and just adapt your baby's diet according to what I've just said. Because the sooner we can get babies on family food and food that they see the family eat, the healthier their development would be, and also their food preferences in the longer term.
I bet that's a really hard conversation to have with a lot of people, because it makes people confront their own eating stuff, right? And like how unhealthy their family food habits might be.
I think that's true, but I think, and I'm not saying I'm doing it perfectly, but at least try not to have a very judgmental conversation. Yeah. And it is the little changes, I always say to people, that helps, Yeah. I've worked with a pregnant lady once who had a craving for burgers, and she was eating 20 beef burgers a week. And I said to her, okay, between me and you, we're not going to put an end to this, but can we make it 15 and then perhaps 10 and then aim for 5? And so again, then I say, the other thing also is not to focus on what not to eat. So what do we have instead? So if you're going to have a meal without a burger, what can we have instead? You know, do you like carrots, lettuce, you know, beetroot? Oh, I love beetroot. I haven't had beetroot for ages. You know, that kind of thing of conversation. And that's how I work with the families as well. It's just small step, little changes. Because what can happen is, and that happens in many families, is the baby eats their own separate diet for the first year of life. So lots of fruit and vegetables and whole grains and steamed fish. And then the minute they hit one and the family change them over onto a family meal, which may not be the best pattern of eating, or a lot of the good that was done in the first year of life can be undone. So it's really, and also in terms of getting the allergens in, you know, families who eat allergens, it's no big deal. I just say eat what, give the baby what the family is eating. But if the family is over restricting their own diet, especially for non-scientific reasons, it also filters back to the fact that the baby ends up with a over-restricted diet based on no science.
So can we talk a little bit about portions?
Yes.
What's a normal portion for, say, a 13-month-old?
Okay, so this is very interesting. There are no published portion sizes for babies.
Interesting.
In most countries. You know, in the United Kingdom and Australia, for sure not. And it is because we believe that babies should eat according to appetite. And then last year, in 2020, we saw the draft guidance from the Dietary Guidelines Committee from the United States. And there were portion sizes for under 12 months in the draft guidelines.
Wow.
And we were all so excited as dietitians because finally we had portion sizes. But it wasn't approved by the final committee who gets the final say about what goes out. So we're still without portion sizes, but based on the draft guidelines, which we are allowed to quote, and we are allowed to write about because it was at least you know, approved on the first level of assessment. A baby about 6 months of age, we'd be thinking about 2 tablespoons of fruit a day, 2 tablespoons of vegetables a day. Some babies may be able to eat it in one sitting. For other babies, it will be broken up. And then we get to about 12, 18 months, we're really talking about 8 tablespoons of fruit, 8 tablespoons of vegetables, about 2 tablespoons of grains a day. So it really depends on the baby's size. You know, I'm sure you've seen, we see some really small, petite little baby girls in clinic, and then you see a baby boy of the exact same age that's about twice her size. So, you know, it will vary, but I normally say to parents somewhere between 2 tablespoons and 8 tablespoons per food group lies the answer. And we just have to find out what works best for your baby. But
it's my baby feels like she won't stop eating. Like she'll just continue, like, unless you're like, okay, all done, like now it's time to move on. Like she'll just sit there and eat. And like, we've taught her some sign language and all she does is just like eat. Like she just wants to eat all day. And I'm not judging her for it, I have this like internal conflict of like, do I feel like, is she hungry? Is she bored? Is there another emotion? Like what's help?
Right. That's a great point, because because mine wouldn't eat. And so I felt like I had to feed her and she was low weight, and my son ate like crazy, like Traci, what you're talking about. So your kids are different too, and they end up on different. So that self-regulation, Carina, I completely believe in, but you have kids that are very, very different with that. How do you handle that?
Okay, so then my next question to you would be, what does her growth chart looks like? Is she just staying on the same growth curve, or percentile, whatever you want to call it, or is she actually climbing those curves and those percentiles, you know, going from a 50 to a 75 to a 90?
Right. She was born little and then wasn't gaining weight. So I had a lot of anxiety at the beginning of like putting weight on her, to the point where like I was like force feeding her formula right before a doctor's appointment to get her weighed, you know what I mean? Just because my guilt was, oh God, like in the parking lot, just like drink the Infamil. And then, So then she got on track, and like she's in like a steady climb. I think she's in like the 75th percentile right now, like across the height and weight, I think.
That's great.
Then I wouldn't worry, because that's lovely proportion, you know. She's got nice proportion, you know, height and weight. And so I would say that perhaps you have some anxiety about her eating too much, but that's clearly what she needs, you know. So I would just leave it at that. But again,
that's the thing. Like, I do have to regulate her, or she would just keep going. Yeah. And and Ruchi, to your point, like I have guilt almost, because I have friends whose babies just won't eat, and that's like a completely different set of problems. And I feel so grateful that she has such a healthy appetite, and she'll eat whatever we're eating. And like, it's all very clean, healthy food, but it's still like, I just don't know.
Yeah, but a tough one. Carina is totally right, because we have patients, or, you know, families come in all the time, and these little babies, and they're so worried they're not eating, but they're perfectly fine on their growth chart. Right. So that happens all the time. They're like, my baby won't eat. And then you look at the growth chart, and that's what happened with my own daughter. Like, my son ate a ton, but he was still following his growth curve, you know, at the right, kind of the same 75th height and weight. My daughter was following hers. She was more around like the 40th height and weight, but they're following their growth chart, and they will go where they need to go. And so there's a lot of worry. I think almost every parent I see, we talk about this, right? It's all about, oh, wait, they're eating too much, or they're eating too little, or I'm worried. And unless we see, to Carina's point, that they are hitting the obesity mark, or the real issues where we have to decrease caloric content, no juices, no, you know, a lot of sweet foods. Like, we got to be a little bit careful on what we feed them. But different kids have different, I don't know, would you say metabolism, Carina, just like adults, where they process it differently? Because you see kids who eat a ton and still stay on there, and they're at different activity levels as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's always going to be the $1,000,000 question. And I don't think it's fully been answered yet, is why some people actually eat very little, but they may be higher height and weight, and other people can eat non-stop, and they like on the lowest growth curve for height and weight. And we see that with babies too. So I think what I would say to you then, if you were a mom in my clinic, is to say that we always say, listen to your baby, feed them until they've had enough. In this case, it seems to be just one of the outliers, but clearly your judgment of when she's had enough is right, because she's perfect when I look at their growth. And I would say just to continue as you're doing at the moment. So I wouldn't be too concerned.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. And then what do you? I have a real. Again, my daughter's 13 months, and she doesn't have much going on in her life, right? Like, there's not like, her life isn't that exciting. So like, food is like she gets excited for food. And I have a hard time when I see my husband being like, good girl, like treats, like as a reward, food as a reward. Is that something that you guys kind of cover?
You know, so I am a dietitian, and I'm very happy in my skin as a dietitian, but there's certain things that I always think make us look like a dietitian, and like you know, almost like a sergeant major and pointing fingers. You shouldn't do that. So one of the things we would advise against is to use treats as a reward, but you know, really within the context of a happy family, you know. I mean, but you know, I think every parent, and me included, has sometimes said to my kids, well done, let's go out for dinner, or let's go celebrate. Or when they were little, perhaps said, well done, you've eaten a whole apple, now you can have a small piece of chocolate, which is not what we advise. But I do think at the end of the day, children pick up anxieties and rules around food very quickly. And I think as long as we can try and be relaxed about the whole process of eating, it will work out in the end. But when they grow up knowing there's rules about good and bad foods, and that's not helpful, you know, which is one of the things that I often tweet about is food labeling, because I happen to love nuts and seeds just because I love nuts and seeds. But my kids seem to think I'm on a keto diet because everything I buy says keto written over the front of the pack. And so my children grow up with a label of my mom's on a keto diet when actually their mom just loves nut butters, and I wouldn't consider a keto diet ever in my life. And I think we have to realize that kids pick up all those kind of things, and also restrictions, and particularly rebellious kids, they're going to be rebellious about whether they're allowed to drive a car or go out till 12 o'clock at night, or, whatever they want to do. Yeah. And that kind of rebellious nature come out as little ones when you start and restrict them about food and make food rules. Mm-hmm. And they may not particularly want to eat the chocolate, but it's the way that they show their rebellion. So I think there's just so much emotion around food as well. And I must say that's probably the first thing I would say to parents in clinic is we have to try and relax. Meal times, it's supposed to be a happy time. Whether we're trying to get the kid to eat more, eat less, or eat different, the only way we will get what we're working towards in the end is by relaxing, because stress at the meal time is like just a no-go. And it's so hard, isn't it? When you've cooked for 3 hours and the kid says, "What's this?" And you can just see nobody's going to eat this.
That's why I don't cook for 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. I mean, I think it's taking a lot of that, this is good, this is bad, this is, and food is going to be a reward. I mean, we go out for ice cream, right? Like that's fun. It's also social. It's also, family time. So there's a lot of good things about it. And I it's been hard, like just with food, with a kid with food allergies and a kid without. And, there is different pickiness and different weight gain. And I always think about it, and, you regulate yourself. Like if I start telling you cannot have any sweets or any desserts at all, you know what that does to a kid? They want it even more, right? Like they're going to find a way to get it. It's like with anything, that you restrict your kids from, so it's like you said, not hardcore rules, like you can, you can't, but some kind of regulation where they understand, everything in moderation. Like you can have your, healthy food. You can have, a burger here and there, a veggie burger for me. You can have a ice cream, or dessert, right? Like it's all okay as long as you're not overdoing anything. And
hard to explain to a toddler though. Like it's just hard to reason with a toddler where it's like, okay, you can have 12 puffs and that's it. Like that, like it's this constant all or nothing really, because I feel like my daughter wants like the entire bag of puffs or she doesn't remember about them that day. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's true. But then everything with a toddler is it's hard, boundaries with everything. And so again, it's sort of like not making a distinction between the fight you have about getting her in bed and the fight you have about getting her not to eat too many puffs. It's all just about setting boundaries. And I think as moms, as you've already previously said, we're so concerned that our children pick up on any eating issues that they may get from us, but we don't worry that they're going to develop sleep issues because we have sleep issues. And it's really for us as parents to really try and see the bigger picture. Food is not separated from normal life. It's just part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just feel like the whole parenting motherhood thing is just like really trying to separate your own stuff and not bring it into your kid's life. I think that's like the hardest part is like being like, it ends with me. And I feel like so many people have food issues, whether you're aware of them or you're not. And food is such a central part of everybody's life. It's not like an alcoholic, like you can quit drinking. Like if maybe that's a bad example. It's not like Yeah, it's not like being an alcoholic. Like you don't have to drink. Like you have to eat. It's it's family time. It's you go out to dinner as a reward. Like it's the center of everybody's life. So it's a very triggering topic, I feel like, to a lot of people.
That's true, but the core of what you're doing is giving her a varied or diverse diet with lots of healthy food.
Yeah.
Whatever sits on the edges really is not that important because the core is sorted out. And again, with my social media involvement, I'm also in this group discussion with mothers of teenage girls. And it is fascinating, how we all beat ourselves up. This one thing she trains too much. That one thing she trains too little.
Right.
This one thing she's got too much muscle. That one thing she's got no muscle definition. This one thing she eats too healthy. That one thing she eats unhealthy. And I think, as I always say, get the core right. If you set the example of being active and fit within your ability, it may be just walking, it may be running, it may be swimming, and get the core of your nutritional intake right. They will learn from that. They're not going to focus on the edges when the core is correct, or as well as you can get it right.
No, that's great, Carina. And it's back to Traci, what we talked about in episode 1. It's no more guilt. Like we're always, kicking ourselves or feeling responsible. And to your point, Carina, like there's no perfection. You're just doing the best you can, right? And you just
you're trying for the best you can.
The fact that we're trying to do our best as parents, that's the other thing. It's not that we don't care. We're really trying. But I do think that food advertisements and food labels, I think they often add to our guilt, because, there may be some or other news clip come out where they've tested a number of baby foods and they found too much lead in this baby food or too little of that. And now every mom that's ever given a baby anything coming out of a jar is guilt-ridden. I think at the end of the day, we just have to think these, news clips are going to come out often. Again, if the core of your baby's diet is home-cooked food, as much as you can fit within your schedule, then those few times that you reverted to something out of a jar or a pouch is probably not the end of the world. But perhaps just don't make it, the everyday food. So definitely. It's just trying to look at it that way.
So I have one more question before we kind of wrap up. And Ruchi, it's kind of geared towards you. You were saying that you go for more of the veggie burger versus a meat burger. Are you a vegetarian?
Yeah.
Did you raise your kids vegetarian?
I did not force it upon them, but that's what we had in the home and that's what they ate. But as they've gotten older, my daughter still is, but she's 14. My son, he's in college now and he's trying everything. And that's good. He should do what, feels right. He's 6'2" and he's a young man and he's going out with his friends and he wants to try stuff. He can try stuff. And eventually he'll figure out where he wants to be, but I mean, to that point, we were able to have very healthy diets being vegetarian. We're not vegan, I'm vegetarian. So we did have milk and eggs, a lot of eggs. We eat eggs almost every day and get protein from many, many sources. So, you can make your food choice for your families. And then when they're an adult, they're going to make their own choices.
Right.
We support that. Like we go out to eat and he orders whatever he wants and it's okay because he's gotta figure it out.
So feeding them as babies, they were vegetarians until they could make their own decisions.
Yeah. Pretty much.
That's so cool. Yeah. Do you see that kids are healthier is a stupid word, but like, do you feel like kids get less sick with no animal protein in their diet? Or do you feel like there's less long-term issues without any animal protein? Either of you?
I would say I really haven't noticed that. I don't think there's any specific studies for that. I mean, I think as we know, and with so many documentaries coming out about how animals are fed and what's happening with them, I think that's that whole organic versus, or, grass fed versus, like, there's a lot going on there as we're mass producing foods, and
Yeah.
you don't really know what that does, not only in, just fruits and vegetables and pesticides and, all that good stuff, and animals being fed, various things that are not their normal diet,
Right.
So unfortunately, a lot of that's happening just to be able to produce enough food for the people who want it,
Yeah.
and to save money and save costs. But it's hard to know exactly how that impacts us as humans. Carina, I'll let you have more info on it, but this is a really important question.
I think, so first I have to say that's of course another stressor in the family. If somebody in the family is trying to be vegetarian and the other are meat eaters, it can cause stress in some families. I think I'd probably be 100% vegetarian if I wasn't married to a South African, and genetically you are born to want to eat T-bone steaks. So we have sort of like an 80-20% vegetarian diet going on. What I do want to say about vegetarian diets, and this study has not been done in babies, but Ruchi and I are definitely going to write this paper in the next 4 years, is that the American gut study showed that in adults who eat 30 different kinds of plant-based foods, they have a better gut microbiome composition and function. And so I think, when you lean more toward vegetarian eating, it's so much easier to hit those 30 portions, And for infants, I'm not talking about 30 bowls. I'm literally talking about perhaps 2 teaspoons can count as your, one of your plant-based foods. So I think that is definitely plant-based eating, particularly in terms of how it interacts with the gut microbiome, is definitely something we need to look at. And I do agree with Ruchi, we need to look at, how these animals are being looked after. The other thing on the negative side of the vegetarian eating is, so I spend a lot of time emailing companies, is, like plant-based yogurts and plant-based milk or beverages. You need to make sure that it's been tested for lead contamination and other heavy metals. So I, for example, mainly use plant-based beverages for lots of different reasons, but I have to call all the companies to find out what's in it. So there's no good diet, I think, and there's no bad diet. It's possible to eat, meat products in your diet, providing you make sure you don't overdo it and you don't have too many fatty versions. I think a vegetarian diet is really good for the gut microbiome, but there's limitations to that as well. And as long as you know how to replace meat-based foods with suitable plant-based foods, there's no reason why vegetarian eating is not a good idea.
Oh my God, I could talk to you guys truly for the rest of my life about this stuff. I find it to be so interesting. And like Carina and Ruchi are just such a fountain of knowledge. And I appreciate you both so much for talking to us.
This is so fun.
Carina,
and it's so great to have your knowledge. I mean,
so fun.
So many things to talk about with food. So many.
Many.
We barely scratched the surface, but this was really.
Carina, where can everybody find you on the internet?
So I do have a website, Carina Venter online. I'm afraid it's not as up to date as it should be, just because I feel like I'm constantly writing papers and grants. But there's some useful information on there, particularly on biodiversity, which really bring us back to the plant-based foods. I am on Twitter. I'm Venter Carina on Twitter, just because there's another Carina Venter on Twitter. So, they can follow me on Twitter. I post a lot of new papers coming out. It's always nutrition focused, often linked with food allergy. But nutrition focused, I retweet a lot of interesting papers coming out. So as we've talked previously, I would like to focus more on education. And I think educating via the social media is just such an important role that we can play.
Yeah. Oh, Carina, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I really, really, really really appreciate it. I think this was fascinating, and you're so brilliant. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And if you guys want any more information on us, you can head on over to babiesfirst.org or follow us on Facebook and Instagram for all of your food allergy needs. Ruchi, this was a good one.
Yes, yes, it was. Oh,
Did I actually say something? I always think,
yeah.
I hope I didn't just talk about obesity again, because I don't want to make it sound like I think people that's overweight are bad people,
No. It didn't
Oh.
feel fat shaming at all. Like, I think you were very eloquent and very.
Thank you. Sorry about scratching my nose, but it's pollen season, and I never had allergies or asthma until I moved to Colorado.
Should move to Chicago. I keep saying it, Carina.
Chicago. I tell you, now I'm on asthma medication permanently, and these pollens are driving me insane. But anyway, sorry about that. You can try and scratch it. I don't know, cover that up. But
hey, Traci, that may be a preview for our next speaker. We should talk about environmental allergies.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Ruchi, I love
not plan that either. But
yeah, this was so fascinating. Thank you again, Carina and Ruchi. Obviously,
yeah. And I hope to see your little girl at some point. I will now stalk you on the internet, see if I can find a
so cute. She's so cute.
I watched her take her first bite of peanut. It was very fun.
Oh, that is just so rewarding, isn't it?
But for all the families also listening, I hope you learned, and Carina is a great source of information. Yeah. So send us your questions, and we will try to get them answered too, because there's so many in this whole field. But yes, Traci's cute daughter, Carina's got a cute daughter too, a little older, kind of my daughter's age.
And Ruchi has got a cute daughter too, same age.
I mean, you guys are so cute. There's no way you can't produce cute kids.
That's funny.
All right, you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching.